We're ProtectResidence.com, and we are here to share with you guys a review of glass door pivot hinge satin. We are living in a magnificent universe of pivots which takes into account the development of everything from sunlight baseboards on space art to tops on music boxes and a great many different things in the middle. Pivots have been being used for a considerable number of years, also have developed from short-sighted to very particular, utilized in territories of aviation, military, processing, travel, and that's only the tip of the iceberg. The regular advantages of using pivots are many, shifted, and for all intents and purposes endless. Glass pivot entryways can be obtained in different sizes and shapes. These can unpretentiously partition spaces while as yet letting through the light, or has more effect on an area with, for instance, tinted glass. Regardless of whether the entryway is large or little, inside or outside, the rotate pivots are very appropriate for light and substantial glass entryways. The turn pivot frameworks are genuinely reasonable for glass entryways and will last for a lifetime. Pivots are produced using top-notch, support-free materials, and line up with any inside. These are appropriate for a glass rotate entryway, crystal-style entryways with steel, entryways with glass also adjoined, or also even a turn entryway altogether produced using glass. Tinted glass as casing covers the picked framework while staying in a similar style as the remainder of the entryway. Rotate pivots are appropriate for outside entryways too. Glass outside rotate entryways are entirely relevant to make an association between inside and out, and also let through heaps of natural light. Glass entryways are exquisite, particularly when their development is enhanced by a glass entryway turn pivot. A rotate entryway perfectly emphasizes a familiar event. Pivot? Rotate pivots are precisely named on the grounds that they turn on a solitary point as opposed to around a stick. A blade pivot is a well-known case of a rotate pivot, yet it isn't the main model. Rotate pivots are given in a wide assortment of plans. The explanation there are such a large number of rotate pivot plans is on the grounds that the idea of this sort of pivot fits an enormous number of employments. Full overlay, halfway overlay, also consistent entryways would all be able to be developed utilizing various types of turn pivots. Since the pivot just turns on a slight single point hub, it very well may be hard to introduce them level. In the event that either pivot is somewhat to one side, the activity of an entryway that have rotate pivots will work inappropriately and rapidly separate the pivot itself. Rotate pivots are ideal for making covered-up pivot structures, however they will in general be fundamentally more delicate than other further developed concealed pivots, for example, cup pivots. Since these are of basic plan, turn pivots will in general be exceptionally reasonable. A pivot hinges is introduced in the floor just as the highest point of the door jamb. Rotate hinges are generally utilized on additional substantial or high-traffic entryways. These can convey significantly more weight than the butt hinges in light of the fact that the heaviness of the entryway is upheld by the base arm and floor as opposed to the door jamb. When remaining on push side of the entryway, which means the entryway opens from you, hope to see that which side the pivot is on. On the off chance that it's on left, it's left-hand entryway. On the off chance that it is on the right, it is a correct hand entryway. The rotate entryway by completely mortising the turn pivot in bottom and top of the entryway, in this manner killing the requirement for complex floor establishments. Just little roof plates and floor are obvious. A pivot is mechanical bearing which associates two strong items, normally permitting just a constrained edge of revolution between them. Two articles associated by a perfect pivot turn comparative with one another about a fixed hub of revolution, every single other interpretation or revolutions being anticipated, and in this manner a pivot has one level of opportunity. Pivots might be made of adaptable material or moving segments. In science, numerous joints work as pivots like the elbow joint. Pivot is an outer joint which holds components or exteriors together, allowing restricted rotational development. In interiors design when joined by an ordinary pivot, the items turn comparative with one another on a hub which is fixed. Turn pivots, which turn in openings in floor, also the highest point of door jamb. Additionally alluded to as twofold acting floor pivot. This sort are found in old dry stone structures and once in a while in old wooden structures. These hinges are additionally called as har-hung entryways. These are minimal effort elective for to be utilized with light-weighted entryways. 5. The expense and quality is last yet the most significant criteria while deciding on a kind of pivot. In play, pivotal development between the leaves along the hub of the stick. This movement enables the leaves to turn without authoritative and is dictated by the run-of-the-mill separation between knuckles, knuckle hole, when the two edges of leaves are adjusted. And, utilize this pivot to embed glass to make a free swinging glass entryway. This turn pivot requires no boring of glass and is easy to introduce. Rouse polished chrome, or satin black finishes, polished brass. Specialized details, glass door pivot hinge is easy to introduce and requires no boring of glass. Weight screws will hold 1/4 inches thick glass safely in the pivot. Accessible in polished chrome, polished satin black or brass finishes. Sold in pair.